YUME Nikki is not your typical game. It is especially not a typical game that you can think of. It's not full of some action elements, it doesn't have that much replay value, but it's really good, and especially for 2004. This game is in fact its own phenomenon, and I would really like to talk about it. Just so that you know, I live in Ukraine, and at the moment the stuff that is happening is terrifying. I'll try to go on and make videos here and there if everything will be fine. But right now, there is something that I have wanted to talk about for quite some time. YUME Nikki was released on June 26 of 2004 by the developer named Kikiyama. Its main feature is the surreal world that is very unique and interesting to explore. I will usually say something very subjective because I want to express the way I felt YUME Nikki. The name of the game itself translates to The Dream Diary, and of course there is a reason for it. We have a character called Madotsuki. She is a girl living in her little flat and she doesn't want to go out. The game itself doesn't actually have any plot or dialogues. However, some people say that there is in fact a goal, and it is to acquire all 24 effects that are present in the game. The main feature of the game is probably that it was made on RPG Maker 2003, just like a lot of different RPG Maker games, and just like a lot of different YUME Nikki clones that we will talk about later. In order to get the best experience from playing YUME Nikki, I have decided to play it during the night, and especially during the nights when I couldn't sleep. The game is very calming and slow, so this only helped me to feel the game better. In conclusion, I have needed a total of 10 hours and some sleepless nights to complete the game and feel it. The atmosphere of the game is made so that it represents the dreams in a very peculiar way. Both the visuals and the sounds are surreal and are interesting to explore. The music itself is either very calming and makes you feel like you want to sleep, or makes you feel that there is some kind of danger. I see why the game is very often described as horror, and especially psychological horror. Its surreal setting that is happening inside of Madotsuki's dreams helps us understand her inner feelings that she has. She is quite young, and her mind is quite flexible, but something is very interesting about Madotsuki as a character. She doesn't talk, and the fact of her living in a flat is not that unimportant. She doesn't go out at all. All Madotsuki can do when she doesn't sleep is either play on a console or go to the balcony, and this is it. Madotsuki's psychological portrait would be very interesting, and she is always sleepy and is isolated from the outer world. And judging by the end of the game, Madotsuki is also depressed. Even though she doesn't say a single word throughout the whole game, we have to understand that those are her dreams, and probably the dream worlds were made by the developer in order to show some of his own inner feelings. We know that Japanese people are especially good in psychological horror genre. Lots of materials of this genre are created by the Japanese, as they consider psychological problems to be a major horror element, while in the Western world we usually see some physical trauma and some painful experience, but at the same time, our inner world, and especially our dreams, can be very different depending on people. Our dreams are usually not predictable, and well, there are also nightmares. There may also be an explanation to why Madotsuki sleeps all the time. Sleeping is one of the major and often used coping mechanisms that depressed patients use to fight depression. People who feel this way or have been diagnosed with depression have problems with sleeping. It's usually insomnia or hypersomnia, and we probably see a very good example of hypersomnia in Madotsuki. Sleeping all the time, doing nothing, feeling absolutely neutral and isolated. Some of the events in the game also show us that Madotsuki is lonely and traumatized. So in conclusion, we see that Madotsuki doesn't want to go out, and she wants everything to end as soon as possible and feel better. And in order to do this, she sleeps all the time, as it is a great way to kill time. It may also be a very personal coping mechanism that helps a person to isolate on another level, by isolating themselves from the real world, as it makes them feel bad. But it's all just a subjective way of how I feel and see Madotsuki as a character. Everyone may interpret her differently, and we also know that there are many different theories that tell us either about the abstract concept and the game as a whole, or about some of the events in the game that can be quite scary. Our dreams can't represent something very unreal. It's usually a way of organizing our own memories, so the dreams represent something that we know and we think of, even if it is something very surreal. If we talk about the traumatized state of Madutsuki, we shall look at the sum of the in-game parts. The one that is quite unexpected is especially face. I was especially terrified by this one, and it is one of the in-game moments that involves a very psychedelic animation of some Rorschach test-like face. Right now, I will read a segment from the YUME NIKKI fandom. The door that leads to the face event looks exactly like the door in Madutsuki's room, the one that leads to the Nexus in the dream world, and the one she doesn't want to live in the real world. This could possibly mean that face could represent the reason why she doesn't want to go out, whether it be some sort of trauma or other fear. Another theory is that this is a dream catcher of some kind, and is reminding Madutsuki that she is dreaming, which is why she wakes up. So probably some of the moments in YUME NIKKI give us some of the ideas and things that Madutsuki is afraid of. At the same time, she gave herself some lessons, even if those are false lessons. We see that she is very afraid of outside world, and phase event represents that very well. The Uboa event represents the fact that Madutsuki is very afraid of repeating something over and over, and her mind is like a compilation of different various information. Her mind is quite anxious and shows her that everyone else is either neutral or aggressive towards her. The game is full of different interactive moments. Well, you have 24 effects and each one of them does something. So there sure must be some interactive element that will change the perspective of interaction with human characters, but in my playthrough it wasn't so. But just the fact of meeting some characters was absolutely exciting to me. Another peculiar thing about the main character in YUME NIKKI is that her name is not a real human name used in Japanese culture. Judging from the fandom, her name means windowed and probably has a dehumanizing function, as we don't see her as a character, but as a window into her own world of dreams, or the world of the creator of the game who has decided to make Madutsuki just as a playable figure. Her name is similar to the colloquial Japanese term for windower, a person who spends a lot of time looking out at the window, which is a daydreamer. She is also often represented as someone who is quite young, so it is weird for her to have that much trauma and depressive moments of life. However, if she is a child, it explains why her world is so colorful and is full of something weird. It has been noted that when you reverse the Romaji name, Madutsuki in Kunrei Shiki romanization, it becomes Ikutodam or Ikutodame, a commonly used phrase that means it is useless to go or it is useless to leave. This may be just a coincidence. She is unhappy with herself, which makes it interesting to observe her and her actions, but at the same time, it is us who control Madutsuki, so some or even most of her actions may not be hers. And then again, one more segment from the fandom. Since many dreams are disturbing when shared, Madutsuki may be just a typical lucid dreamer trying to find a release from her sadness by exploding her dreams for fun and self-discovery. She may have been taught self-induced lucid dreaming to reduce frequency of nightmares and keeps a dream diary to keep track of her dreams as a self-care exercise. It may be real considering her hypersomnia and depressed thoughts. An image of a human figure that somewhat resembles Madutsuki has been found on a very ancient Paracas poncho, which is interesting considering that many examples of Mesoamerican imagery found throughout the game. And yes, we do see one of the worlds in YUME NIKKI that is fully dedicated to Mesoamerican style and culture. The link to the poncho is in the description. Madutsuki's shirt design resembles a simplified version of the CGK character. This character can mean to shine or window, matching the theme of Madutsuki's name. It can also be used as an emoticon expressing sadness or shock. In Japanese, the kanji means clear or bright, which could be a small indicator for her personality. But the theories is a very different thing that I could make a video about. Tell me if you want a YUME NIKKI theory video in the comments below. My own theory is very simple, and I try to represent it throughout the whole video. She is depressed, her state is a mess, and she can't do anything about it but use her hypersomnia as a means to help herself and practice lucid dreaming. For some reason there is too much to say about this deep game, and at the same time it feels like there are not that many ways of expressing the game itself. It's not that easy to describe it, so go on and play it yourself. It is a great game that is definitely worth your time, so go out and check it. It is even free on Steam, so why not? Now let's talk about the fan games. There is a ton of them, such a giant amount that no other game has that many fan games. The reasons might be quite simple. The original game was made on RPG Maker, so the fans will know what to use, and it's not one of the hardest engines to master, so people will use it and make their own games. And I was absolutely shocked by the amount of the games that you can see. Just so that you know, there is a whole list of fan games and it is giant. There is even a YUME NIKKI fan games fandom, and to be honest, I am especially interested in Flash Child and a game called I Cannot Drown. I am not that interested in YUME NIKKI as it seems to be too much, too abstract, and it even has a marijuana goddess world. To me, it just doesn't make much sense. And then I am more interested in the themes of interesting characters and some other ideas. At the moment of making this video, the list of fan-made games has a link to the archive. And the archive has a 50 GB file consisting of 293 games. And it also includes their versions and includes translations. We see that there aren't only fan games, but they are also divided into two different categories. Those are traditional and original. The main difference is that traditional fan games share the same type of gameplay that YUME NIKKI has. Those games are about exploration and effects. However, the original ones may be very different. For example, there are YUME Kart, which is a YUME NIKKI karting game, and Dream vs Dream, which is a fighting in the YUME NIKKI setting. There are also game mods. I personally know about the Doom mod and a Half-Life mod. Both mods are not completed, but I look forward to playing them. So now, let's conclude everything. The game itself has a great soundtrack. I really like the music in the game and it's worth listening to it. The gameplay is slow, but represents it well that you have to explore everything and interact with different objects, making it more interesting for the player to use a giant amount of effects. Also, many different effects and their collection are important for the ending of the game, which is another giant theme. And at the same time, effects and their collection are mixes with the exploration. The characters are interesting and you remember them quite well. And there is also a manga and many different fan games, so well, you will have quite a lot of stuff to do after you finish the game. Probably the main element is the visuals. They are very different and represent many different styles and visual elements such as graffiti, Mesoamerican visuals, some glitches, mazes, and not only. The thing I especially like about YUME NIKKI is that, well, it's not a game, it's an experience, and you should definitely feel it.